What if the girl fixing your broken-down Mustang turned out to be the very child you abandoned a decade ago, only now she's wearing the ring you swore would protect her and she has no idea who you are? This isn't just a story about a car on the side of the road. It's about a billion-dollar secret buried beneath an orphanage. A powerful man haunted by the promise he broke, and a 10-year-old black girl whose gift for mending machines is about to dismantle a legacy built on lies. The question isn't whether Andrew Whitaker can make it to his meeting with the governor. The question is whether he can survive the truth when it shows up in pigtails and grease-stained fingers. And once that ring flashes in the sun, there's no putting the past back in park. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. The sun was boiling the tar off the road when Maya Johnson spotted the red Shelby GT500 pulled off to the shoulder like it had given up on life. She squinted at the gleaming chrome and the angry white man pacing beside it, suit jacket thrown over the side mirror, phone glued to his ear. Her backpack was heavy, dragging one strap off her shoulder, but she stopped anyway. A part of her, maybe the stubborn part her Aunt Renee called grown too early, wanted to keep walking, but the mechanic in her, the one Uncle Leon had raised with socket wrenches and weekend brake jobs, tilted her head at the sound the engine had made before dying. Something wasn't right. Not with the car, and not with the man, either. "I don't care if it's triple overtime, get me a damn tow," the man barked into his phone, pacing like a Wall Street wolf lost in farm country. "I've been stuck here for 2 hours, and I've got a meeting with the governor in less than 3?" Maya waited until he hung up, then stepped a little closer. "Need some help?" The man turned and blinked, clearly startled by the sound of a child offering assistance like she was AAA in sneakers. His eyes ran over her colorful braids, my t-shirt hanging past her shorts, grease on her fingertips, and his face slipped into that smile adults wear when they think they're being polite to someone who can't possibly know anything useful. "Sweetheart, this is a performance vehicle. I need an actual mechanic." Maya smiled without blinking. "I am one, kind of. My uncle's been teaching me since I was 5. I can at least tell you what's wrong." She didn't wait for permission, dropped her backpack, popped the hood, and leaned over like she'd done it 100 times before. Because she had. Andrew Whitaker didn't know what to do with his hands. For the first time in years, he was in a situation he couldn't buy his way out of. Maya peered in, pointed to a small puddle on the gravel. "Coolant leak," she said matter-of-factly. "Probably from the radiator hose. That's why it overheated." Andrew stared at her like he was trying to remember a password he used to know. "Did you smell something sweet? Like syrup?" she asked. He blinked. Yes, actually." Maya nodded. "That's ethylene glycol. Classic coolant." She reached for her kit and pulled out a roll of special tape. "I can patch it enough to get you to town, but you'll need to refill with water until you can replace the hose." Andrew was still watching her, but not like before. There was something nagging him now, something old and sharp and unspoken. Her eyes, the way she tilted her head when she worked, the calm in her voice like she knew something everyone else missed. And then she brushed her hair back from her face and it caught the sun, a flicker of green and gold on her finger. His breath stopped. An emerald stone set in antique gold held tight on her tiny finger. With thread, his voice came out slower than he meant. "That ring. Where did you get that ring?" Maya looked down, then shrugged. "It was my mom's. I mean, my adoptive mom's. She passed away last year. Said it was from someone important. Said it was a promise." Andrew staggered a step back, sweat chilling on his spine. Because 12 years ago, he gave that same ring to a little girl at an orphanage, right before she disappeared, and now she was fixing his car, and didn't even know he was the man who left her behind. Andrew stared at that emerald ring like it was a ghost with teeth. His mind dropped out of the present, free-falling 12 years back to a quiet office that smelled like disinfectant and lies. Little Angel's orphanage had been a clean operation on paper. White picket fences, pastel walls, nurses who smiled too tight. He remembered walking down that hallway, trying not to let the noise of his father's voice echo in his head. Just sign the check, Andrew. Your conscience doesn't pay dividends. But there was this girl, Maya. Big brown eyes that looked like they'd already seen too much. Quiet, sharp, the kind of child who made adults uncomfortable because she listened harder than she spoke. He'd brought the ring that day, some impulsive gesture he thought would make up for everything he hadn't done. Antique emerald, crescent imperfection at the base, once belonged to his mother. He told her it was a promise, that he'd come back for her. But Little Angels shut down 3 days later, and the girl, he told her it was a promise, that he'd come back for her kitchen, but death was worth more. A ring or a child. That he'd come back for her, but death worth more. Shut up the door. Shut up. Up. He forced himself back to the present, where that same girl, no longer so little, but still Maya, was tightening the cap on her coolant patch like it was just another day. She didn't recognize him. Of course she didn't. That kind of betrayal doesn't leave a scar you can see. "Can I give you a ride home?" he asked, voice cracking like old vinyl. Maya hesitated. She looked at the car, then at the sun beginning to slide off the sky, then nodded. "Okay, but just to the corner by Parker Street. My aunt doesn't like surprises." Andrew opened the door for her, trying to still the tremor in his hand. As they drove, the air between them grew heavier, thick with the weight of things neither of them understood yet. He asked questions like a man fumbling for a key in the dark. She answered with the simplicity of a child who has nothing to hide and everything to lose. "Where do you go to school?" "Emerson Elementary." "You always lived around here?" "Since I was 3. Before that, I think my mom said we moved from the city." Her voice trailed, a small hesitation like a skipped beat in a song. Andrew gripped the wheel tighter. "Your mom, is she the one who gave you the ring?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, Diana, she adopted me. She died last year, car accident." She said it like it was a fact she'd memorized, not a wound she carried. Andrew blinked hard, focusing on the road. "Did she ever say where she adopted you from?" Maya shrugged. "Some orphanage. Little Angels, I think, but she didn't talk about it much." The name hit Andrew like a slap. His foot almost slipped off the gas. "You sure? Little Angels?" "Yeah. Why?" Her voice was still curious, still clean, and suddenly every word she said felt like a landmine wrapped in kindness. "I just remember that name," he managed. "From a long time ago." They reached the corner, a modest neighborhood with neatly trimmed grass and laundry lines that told more truth than bank statements ever could. Maya hopped out and slung her backpack over her shoulder. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Whitaker." Before she could leave, he pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Listen, if you ever need anything at all, just call me." She took the card like it was a puzzle piece that didn't fit yet. "Okay, thanks again." Then she was gone, skipping up the walkway to a small blue house with flower pots in the windows. Andrew sat in the car, heart pounding, stomach twisted like a bolt gone loose. He didn't wait. Pulled out his phone and called his private investigator. "Ramirez, I need you to find someone. Maya Johnson, 10 years old, lives with her aunt and uncle, last name unknown. Used to be Maya, I don't know, from Little Angels Orphanage. And the ring? Find everything you can about that ring. Photographs, appraisal records, anything." He hung up before the man could ask questions, because Andrew already had one answer he didn't want. She might be the one he lost. And if that was true, then what came next wasn't just about family. It was about everything his family had buried to protect themselves. At the top of Whitaker Enterprises, behind a biometric locked door and 2 security cameras, Andrew sat alone in the boardroom, the city skyline glaring through the glass like judgment. He scrolled through files never meant for his eyes, folders marked with coded names, shell corporations, medical notations buried in legalese. He wasn't just looking at business records anymore. He was reading the blueprint of a cover-up. Little Angels wasn't just closed. It had been erased. The children's names were redacted in most documents, but a few slipped through. Birthdays, medical evaluations, odd behavioral notes like extraordinary spatial awareness or calculated reasoning beyond age group. Every so often a name would be underlined in red, flagged as special case, like Maya had been. And beneath one sheet, an adoption ledger, someone had scribbled D. Johnson unsanctioned removal in the mark. The ink was smudged, like the paper itself had tried to forget what it carried. Andrew closed his eyes, leaned back, and tried to breathe through the sick churn in his stomach. A quiet buzz broke the silence. Ramirez. He picked up fast. "Talk to me." The investigator didn't waste time. "You were right. Diana Johnson was a registered nurse at Little Angels, working under a pseudonym. She disappeared the same week the orphanage closed, taking one child with her. Maya. No formal adoption records, no court filings, no trace. I checked everything from the city to the county to the state. Legally, that child didn't exist for 3 years." Andrew's hand clenched the armrest. "And the accident?" Ramirez hesitated. "Car crash, yes, but the brake lines were cut. No official investigation. Declared mechanical failure." Andrew pressed his fist to his mouth, eyes burning. "She vanished without a trace, except for a child and a ring," he muttered. Ramirez added, "And someone paid a lot of money to keep it that way." He stared down at a list of children labeled reallocated, then cross-referenched it with another file marked terminated programs. A cold pattern emerged. The same names were popping up across at least 4 other institutions that had been quietly dismantled, all purchased by shell companies linked to Whitaker Holdings. Some of those children went into foster care. Some were adopted. A few simply disappeared. Andrew's chest tightened. These weren't abandoned properties. They were experiments shut down. What do you do when your empire's concrete is made of kids' broken futures? What do you do when you find out your last name is a synonym for stolen lives? Across town, Uncle Leon stood in the backyard, sipping lukewarm coffee, when he noticed a black SUV parked too long across the street. 2 men in suits sat inside, sunglasses reflecting the modest house. They weren't here for a neighbor. They were watching Maya. Leon felt the chill settle in his bones. He slipped inside, found Maya humming at her workbench, her hands wrist-deep in an old ham radio she'd pulled from a junk shop. He watched her for a moment, steady, focused, unaware that the shadows were already creeping back. Leon picked up his phone and dialed the number Diana had whispered to him in a panic 11 years ago. "Marcus Hayes," answered the voice on the other end. "Investigative desk." Leon didn't introduce himself. "It's about Little Angels," he said. "And a girl with an emerald ring. I think it's time to make good on Diana's last request." There was a pause, then Hayes answered with quiet resolve. "Where do we start?" Leon didn't speak right away. He just stood at the edge of the workshop, arms folded, eyes on Maya as she polished the last screw on the old ham radio she'd brought back to life. The quiet buzz of accomplishment in the air was something sacred, but tonight it had to be broken. Renee stepped beside him, clutching a worn envelope in her hand, the kind that had lived in the back of a drawer for far too long. "Maya," Leon said gently, "we need to talk." She looked up, sensing the weight in his voice. "Sit with us, baby," Renee added softly. Maya set her tools down and took a seat at the kitchen table, her eyes bouncing between them. Leon's hands folded together tightly. "It's about your mom, about Diana, and us, and a promise we've carried for a long time." Renee nodded. "She didn't just adopt you, Maya. She saved you. When the orphanage shut down, she ran, changed your name, changed ours too, all to protect you from something we didn't even fully understand." They slid the envelope across the table, and Maya opened it with fingers that suddenly felt too large and too small all at once. Inside, a letter, handwritten in looping script. "My dear Maya," it began, "if you're reading this, someone's found you. And that means it's time you knew the truth. She read slowly, each word peeling away another layer of the life she thought she knew. Diana had been a nurse at Little Angels. She had seen what the place really was. Not a shelter, but a system. A funnel for children who were different, children like Maya. The letter described her uncanny understanding of machines, her instinct for how things worked, her quiet gift that made her valuable in all the wrong ways. "You are the circuit breaker in a system built to burn," Diana wrote. "They didn't see a little girl. They saw a tool. That's why I ran. That's why I gave you a new name, a quiet life, and a chance to grow without their hands trying to twist your future." Across the city, Andrew stood in his father's penthouse office, the lights of Boston flickering behind the glass like distant warning signs. The files were spread across the table, transfer records, falsified closures, flagged names. Names like Maya's. "You knew," Andrew said, voice low and bitter. "You knew she was taken. You knew she was hidden." Howard didn't flinch. "She was a risk," he said, swirling his drink. "The program couldn't afford risks. The land is worth more than sentiment, Andrew. She's one girl. This is business." Andrew stared at him, jaw clenched. "She was a promise." Howard leaned back, unimpressed. "You were always too emotional for leadership. That girl is a ghost. She's not coming back." But Andrew was already backing away from his father's desk, a fire quietly rising in his chest. This wasn't just, it was a life. And now, finally, he knew what side of the line he stood on. Back home, Maya sat on her bed, her mother's letter lying open beside her, the ring on her finger heavy with new meaning. She turned it slowly, remembering the way it had caught the sun earlier that day, the way Andrew's face had changed when he saw it. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the others who had disappeared, whose stories had been buried under concrete and corporations. She picked up Andrew's business card from her nightstand, studied the embossed lettering, then set it next to the ring. For a moment, she just breathed. Then she reached for the phone. The number rang twice before a voice answered. "Whitaker, it's Maya," she said, steady and clear. "I think we need to talk." On the other end, Andrew closed his eyes. The conversation they should have had a decade ago was finally about to begin, and this time he wouldn't walk away. The girl he had once failed wasn't just a memory anymore. She was a force, and she had questions that deserved answers. The top-floor conference room of Whitaker Enterprises wasn't ready for what was about to happen. The board of directors sat in polished silence, expecting an update on Project Horizon and their steady climb back into public favor. Instead, Andrew Whitaker walked in without a suit, without a smile, and without the usual spin. He carried a laptop and a look that sent tension rippling through the air like a storm front. "We're not here to talk about profits," he said, plugging the laptop into the presentation screen. "We're here to talk about the truth." Before anyone could object, the screen lit up with scanned documents. Purchase orders for closed orphanages, memos marked Project Prometheus, internal correspondence linking executive names to hush payments, and classified testing logs. The room went dead quiet. Footsteps echoed down the hall. The double doors swung open. Federal agents entered in crisp silence, followed by Marcus Hayes holding a streaming camera. And right behind him, Maya Johnson. She walked in steady, wearing her mother's ring and the calm of someone who's already survived worse. "This is being broadcast live," Marcus said, setting the camera down. "I suggest you choose your next words wisely." Howard Whitaker stood slowly from his leather chair, buttoning his jacket like he was still in control. "This is a smear campaign," he growled. "Illegally obtained data, misinterpreted documents, nothing more." He turned to the board, voice smooth as ever. "Don't be fooled. This is a witch hunt. My son's emotions have clouded his judgment." His eyes landed on Maya with a sneer. "And you're letting a child dictate corporate policy now?" But the room wasn't buying it. Howard's voice sounded hollow in the face of so much evidence, so much betrayal. Maya stared at him, unshaken. "Even a throne of cash can't save you from a 10-year-old with the truth," she said. The metaphor hit harder than a gavel. The agents didn't move yet. They were waiting. waiting for one more nail to be driven in, and Maya had it. She reached for her ring, twisted it gently, and removed the stone. Inside the band, hidden beneath the emerald, was a tiny USB. She walked to the head of the table, plugged it into Andrew's laptop, and nodded. What followed wasn't just paperwork, it was footage. Grainy, time-stamped video clips of children being tested under observation. Psychological assessments, interviews with scientists referring to them as subjects, not... One video showed Diana Johnson walking down a hallway with baby Maya in her arms, glancing over her shoulder. Another showed Howard barking into a phone, "Find the girl, she's worth more than the building." The board sat stunned. A few turned pale. One man stood and walked out, unable to stomach what he saw. No more secrets. No more denials. The federal agents stepped forward. "Howard Whitaker," one said. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, endangerment of minors, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Howard's eyes widened for a beat. Then he laughed. "You think any of this will stick?" he barked. "You're arresting me on the word of a child and a traitor?" But his voice cracked at the edge and his hands shook as the cuffs clicked behind his back. Maya watched as he was led away, face red with rage, still trying to talk over the evidence. "This isn't over," he yelled, echoing down the hall like the cry of a crumbling empire. Maya stepped forward, speaking not to him, but to the room, and to the thousands watching online. "Broken machines can be fixed," she said. "But broken people have to choose if they want to be repaired. That's not my job anymore." The silence that followed was deeper than any applause. It was respect and reckoning. The agents exited. The door closed behind them, and the people left in the room sat suspended between shame and awakening. Maya turned to Andrew, who hadn't moved since the arrest. He looked at her, eyes glassy, jaw tight. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Maya tilted her head. "Yes, I did. Not just for me. For all the ones who didn't get to stand in this room." Marcus shut off the camera. "That last line," he muttered, "is going to play 100,000 times before midnight." In the room where power used to sit without question, truth had just taken its seat. And this time, it wasn't moving. 5 years had passed, but the soil still remembered. Where the Little Angels orphanage once stood, sterile halls, locked files, and whispered experiments, now rose the Johnson Center for Young Inventors, a bright complex of glass and steel with solar panels that shimmered like hope on a summer morning. Maya Johnson, now 15, moved through the halls with a quiet authority that didn't come from age but from earned gravity. She wasn't a prodigy with a clipboard. She was a builder with a mission. In the robotics lab, a group of middle schoolers clustered around her as she explained how to wire a biosensor. The same girl who once patched up a Mustang on the side of the road was now planting truth where injustice once grew, her every step a reminder that something beautiful could rise out of the wreckage of something cruel. And the kids? They didn't just see a mentor, they saw proof. At the back of the facility, Andrew Whitaker leaned against the railing of a viewing platform, dressed in jeans and a rolled-up shirt, the last traces of his corporate life long behind him. He had traded tailored suits for soldering irons and spreadsheets for scholarships. He had sold off everything, stocks, properties, patents, and used every cent to fund what would become the Prometheus Initiative, now the primary sponsor behind the Johnson Center and 3 others like it. No contracts, no cameras, no manipulation, just pure investment in potential. The boardroom that once choked on silence now buzzed with ideas, and he'd never breathed freer. He no longer walked in his father's shadow. He walked beside Maya, and every dollar spent now bought back pieces of his soul. People still asked why he did it. The truth was simple. He saw her fix one thing he never could: himself. A letter arrived one afternoon, hand-delivered by a quiet courier in a dark blue blazer. Maya read it slowly, seated at the old garden bench by the fountain she and the kids had built from recycled pipes. It was from Victoria Whitaker. Howard's estranged daughter, now a federal prosecutor who had taken her father's name off her resume and replaced it with a purpose. Maya, the letter began, "Thanks to your testimony and that ring, we've found 5 more facilities like Little Angels. 37 children were identified, protected, and placed in homes where they are now thriving. Some of them have talents like yours. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you." Maya folded the letter gently. Power based on fear collapses when exposed, but power rooted in service grows. She looked around the center, at the solar array, the toolboxes, the kids soldering tiny circuits that might one day change the world. The Whitaker legacy hadn't just been rewritten, it had been replaced, word by word, by a girl who wasn't supposed to survive the first chapter. The auditorium was packed for the Johnson Center's first official graduation. 12 teenagers, each from communities the old system overlooked, walked across the stage to applause so loud it echoed off the walls like thunderclaps. Maya stood off to the side in a navy blazer and a white shirt with grease smudges on the sleeves, holding a tablet with her closing speech. But when the mic came to her, she didn't read a word. She looked out at the audience, then down at her ring. The emerald still green, the message it carried no longer hidden. "When I was 10, she began, I fixed a stranger's car on the side of the road. I thought I was helping someone get to a meeting. I didn't know I was stepping into the middle of a secret. I didn't know that secret would rewrite everything I believed about myself." The crowd sat silent, leaning in. But that moment taught me something. You don't need wealth to be powerful. You need purpose. You need people who refuse to accept what is just because it's always been. Broken systems aren't destiny. They're design. And design can be changed. She stepped away from the mic to a standing ovation, but she didn't linger. She walked down the center aisle with Andrew at her side, past photographs that documented the fall of Whitaker Enterprises and the rise of a different kind of legacy. They exited the building just as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the garden. Outside, a new sign had just been installed at the main gate. The metal letters gleamed with promise. "Every child deserves freedom." Maya paused for a moment to read it again, not because she didn't know the words by heart, but because they still gave her goosebumps. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the end of the silence. And in that silence, a generation of voices was about to rise. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.